Medieval farmers were growing plants that could save your life, but modern society has completely forgotten about them. These aren't rare exotic herbs. They're probably growing in your backyard right now. Take respiratory problems, for example. Every winter, millions of people suffer from persistent coughs that keep them awake at night and drain their energy. We've been conditioned to rush to the pharmacy for expensive synthetic solutions, but medieval farmers had a completely different approach. They simply walked outside to their gardens and picked their medicine fresh from the ground. Horehound was their secret weapon against respiratory problems, a humble plant that could clear congestion faster than anything we buy in stores today. This humble plant has fuzzy, grayish-green leaves and small white flowers. When medieval farmers felt a cough coming on, they'd boil these leaves into a strong tea that could clear congestion fast. The clever part was how they prepared it. Medieval farmers mixed horehound with honey, creating the world's first cough drops. They'd boil the mixture until it hardened, then break off pieces to suck on. They invented the cough drop centuries before anyone thought to patent it. What made horehound effective was its natural ability to work as an expectorant, helping your lungs cough up mucus instead of letting it sit there. Medieval farmers accidentally discovered that sometimes the medicine that tastes the worst works the best. The taste is bitter, which is why they got creative with honey additions. Those traditional horehound drops aren't just candy, they're actually functional medicine that's been helping people breathe easier for over 1,000 years. While a horehound handled coughs with its bitterness, medieval farmers knew that sometimes you needed something even more bitter to tackle much more serious internal problems. Medieval farmers dealt with intestinal parasites, a problem that would make most modern people squeamish. Farmers needed something strong enough to handle these unwelcome guests. Enter wormwood. Bitter enough to make you question life choices, but effective enough to save lives. Wormwood's silvery gray leaves look almost ghostly, with an otherworldly smell. If plants could have personalities, wormwood would be that friend who tells you the harsh truth even when you don't want to hear it. The primary use was exactly what the name suggests, getting rid of worms. Intestinal parasites were incredibly common due to poor sanitation and close contact with animals. Farmers would wake up tired and weak, not knowing tiny creatures were eating their food from the inside. Medieval farmers showed ingenuity by not just choking down bitter wormwood tea. Many families infused small amounts into wine, creating bitter wine. They basically invented the world's first medicinal cocktail, though probably not the kind you'd order at happy hour. Preparation required careful attention to dosage. Medieval farmers learned that a little wormwood went a long way, just a pinch of dried leaves steeped in hot water. The plant hasn't gotten any less bitter over the centuries, which is probably why it still works so well. After dealing with such harsh medicinal flavors, medieval farmers desperately needed herbs that could actually make their food taste good instead of just curing ailments. After dealing with bitter medicines, medieval farmers appreciated herbs that could make their daily meals more enjoyable. Lavage was their kitchen superstar, a plant that did the work of 3 different vegetables while taking up the space of just one. This overachiever probably made regular celery feel inadequate about its life choices. Lavage grows tall with thick, hollow stems and glossy green leaves. The entire plant smells intensely of celery and herbs, but with a depth of flavor that makes modern celery taste like crunchy water by comparison. The leaves were added to broths and stews to create rich, savory flavors. It was like having a flavor amplifier that grew right outside your door. The thick roots were harvested in fall like any root vegetable, while the seeds were dried and ground into spice. They basically got 3 different seasonings from one plant, which must have felt like winning the medieval lottery. The strong smell also served multiple purposes. Farmers often planted it near livestock pens because its intense aroma helped mask less pleasant smells. Once established, Lavage plants could live for many years, providing reliable harvests season after season. The plant was basically the Swiss Army knife of medieval cooking. But sometimes those intense flavors could overwhelm delicate stomachs, and medieval farmers needed gentler herbs for when their digestive systems needed soothing rather than stimulation. Medieval farmers appreciated herbs that could solve multiple problems at once. Costmary was their answer to digestive troubles and freshness challenges. Medieval farmers basically discovered the first multitasking herb long before anyone invented the term life hack. When crushed, these leaves release a pleasant, slightly minty aroma with hints of lemon and balsam. This gentle scent could mask the less pleasant odors that were part of daily life. The primary medicinal use was for digestive problems. Costmary tea became their go-to remedy for upset stomachs, gas, and general digestive discomfort. Unlike harsher herbs, Costmary was gentle enough for daily consumption and actually tasted pleasant. They discovered Costmary leaves could serve as natural deodorizers. This was medieval body spray that actually worked and didn't make people avoid you in small spaces. Farmers would tuck fresh leaves into their clothing or rub dried leaves on their skin. The practice of carrying Costmary during church services became so common that the herb earned the nickname Bible leaf. The mild stimulating effect helped them stay alert during religious services that could last for hours. Medieval farmers also discovered Costmary had mild sedative properties. It was like having a natural sleep aid that also made your bed smell better. While Costmary could handle mild problems with its gentle touch, medieval farmers faced much more aggressive enemies that required a plant capable of waging serious warfare. A few months ago, I had no idea what a health ring even was until my fiancée got me one, and I have to say, I'm shocked this isn't a widely known and used product. It tracks my stress levels, and what I found out is that some supplements made my stress score spike, while others actually helped bring it down. I adjusted a few things based on that, and honestly, I feel 10 years younger. My wife mainly uses it to track her menstrual cycles, and she is obsessed with her sleep quality score. I noticed they are currently running a limited 69% discount, but I don't know how long it will last. It's currently only $60, and it's clear. This one is the best bang for your buck, with other health rings priced around $350 with less functions. They managed to price it this low because they cut out the middleman like Amazon, Walmart, etc., who drive up the price and take a big margin, ending up with the customer paying 3 to 5 times more. If you are on TV, you can check it out yourself by pausing the video and scanning the QR code with your phone camera or clicking the first link in the description of this video. Medieval farmers battled insects without modern sprays and chemicals, so they needed plants that could wage war on bugs naturally. Tanzy became their secret weapon against flies, ants, and other unwanted creatures. This bright yellow flowering plant was basically the medieval equivalent of calling an exterminator, except it grew in their gardens and worked around the clock. Tanzy stands out with clusters of bright yellow button-like flowers that look almost artificial. The deeply divided leaves release a strong, camphor-like scent when touched. Exactly what made Tanzy so effective at repelling insects. Medieval farmers harvested Tanzy at peak flowering time, when the essential oils that bugs hated were strongest. Dried Tanzy bundles hanging from rafters were like having a security system that never needed batteries. The effectiveness against flies was remarkable. Farmers scattered dried Tanzy leaves on windowsills, hung bundles near doorways, and rubbed fresh leaves on their skin before working outdoors. They basically found a way to draw property lines that ants actually respected. Culinary uses required careful attention to dosage. Medieval farmers learned that tiny amounts could add interesting flavor to spring puddings, but they were cautious about quantities. The plant spread readily, giving medieval farmers plenty of pest-repelling material, though they learned to manage Tanzy with clear boundaries. But even the best pest control couldn't prevent every injury, and medieval farmers needed immediate solutions for the cuts and wounds that were inevitable in their dangerous work. When medieval farmers got cuts, stings, or scrapes while working, they didn't have the luxury of running to a medicine cabinet. Instead, they turned to Plantain, a common plant that grew practically everywhere and could handle wound care better than most modern first aid supplies. This humble weed was basically nature's emergency room, available 24 hours a day. Plantain grows low to the ground with broad, ribbed leaves that form flat rosettes. Most people today consider it a lawn weed, but medieval farmers recognized its incredible healing properties. The most common use was immediate wound treatment. Fresh plantain leaves could be quickly crushed and applied directly to wounds where they would stop bleeding, reduce pain, and prevent infection. It was like having a pharmacy growing right in the pathways where people were most likely to get injured. The preparation method was beautifully simple. Medieval farmers would grab fresh plantain leaves, chew them briefly to release healing juices, then apply the pulped leaves directly to cuts or stings. They basically found a universal antidote for most of the painful surprises that outdoor work could deliver. For more serious wounds, medieval farmers would crush multiple plantain leaves with stones, creating a green paste that could be spread over larger injuries. People spend money on expensive wound care products while literally walking over one of nature's best healing plants every day. While plantain could heal physical wounds quickly, medieval farmers understood that emotional wounds and daily stress required a completely different kind of healing approach. Medieval life could be emotionally challenging, with constant physical demands, uncertain food supplies, and regular conflicts. Medieval farmers discovered that borage could provide the courage and emotional strength they needed. This cheerful blue-flowered plant was like having a therapist and a cheerleader growing in the same garden bed. Borage produces beautiful star-shaped flowers in bright blue, and the leaves have a distinctive cucumber-like smell when crushed. The plant basically advertised its mood-boosting properties by looking happy and confident. The primary use was for what medieval farmers called strengthening the heart and lifting the spirits. They would add fresh borage leaves and flowers to wine, creating what they believed was a courage-boosting drink. They basically invented liquid courage that actually worked and didn't leave them with regrets the next morning. Medieval farmers noticed that regular consumption of borage tea seemed to help people cope better with ongoing stress and fatigue. The edible flowers added both beauty and function to medieval meals, tossed into salads or floated in drinks. Growing borage was straightforward, thriving in ordinary garden soil, and actually preferring somewhat poor conditions. The plant would self-seed readily, ensuring ongoing supplies for families who found it beneficial. But while borage helped medieval farmers gather courage for their demanding days, they still needed reliable ways to shut down their minds and bodies when those long days finally came to an end. After long days of physical labor and constant stress, medieval farmers needed reliable ways to get restorative sleep. Valyrian became their answer to insomnia, anxiety, and overstimulation that made restful sleep difficult. This herb was basically medieval Ambien, except it grew in their gardens and didn't come with scary side effects. Valyrian produces tall stems with clusters of small pale flowers that smell surprisingly sweet. But the magic happens underground, where Valyrian develops thick, gnarled roots that smell absolutely terrible when dried. The smell has been compared to dirty socks and worse things that polite people don't mention. Medieval farmers learned to overlook the offensive odor because Valyrian's sleep-inducing effects were undeniably powerful. They basically endured handling something that smelled like a medieval locker room because they knew it would guarantee good sleep. The preparation usually involved grinding dried Valyrian root and steeping it in hot water to make tea. Medieval farmers would drink this concoction about an hour before bedtime. Medieval farmers discovered that small amounts of Valyrian could calm nerves during stressful daytime situations without causing drowsiness. For severe insomnia, they would create concentrated tinctures by soaking Valyrian roots in wine for weeks. The social acceptance of Valyrian's terrible smell shows how desperately medieval farmers needed effective sleep solutions. Good sleep was essential, but medieval farmers also needed herbs that could help their bodies recover from the inevitable injuries and broken bones that came with their physically demanding lifestyle. Medieval farmers faced constant risk of broken bones, sprains, and other injuries from physically demanding work. Comfrey became their secret weapon for speeding bone and tissue repair in ways that seemed almost magical. This green leafy plant was basically medieval physical therapy, except it actually worked faster than most modern treatments. Comfrey earned the nickname knit bone for good reason. The large hairy leaves contain compounds that actively promote bone healing and tissue regeneration. Medieval farmers would crush fresh comfrey leaves into a paste and apply it directly to broken bones, sprains, and bruises. Medieval farmers learned that comfrey worked best when applied externally only. They would make poultices by crushing fresh leaves and roots, then spreading the paste over injured areas and wrapping it with cloth. It was like having a cast that actually made bones heal faster instead of just holding them in place. The timing of comfrey harvest was important for maximum healing power. Medieval farmers discovered that roots collected in fall contained the highest concentrations of active compounds. What medieval farmers didn't know was that comfrey contains allantoin, a compound that stimulates cell division and speeds tissue repair. Modern research has confirmed this compound can significantly accelerate healing. Growing comfrey was straightforward, and the plant was practically indestructible once established. While comfrey could mend broken bones and torn muscles, medieval farmers also faced threats that attacked from the inside. Medieval farmers dealt with respiratory problems that could turn deadly quickly, especially during cold winter months. Lungwort became their primary weapon against coughs, chest congestion, and breathing difficulties. This spotted leaf plant was basically nature's nebulizer, delivering relief directly to struggling lungs. Lungwort gets its name from distinctive leaves covered with white spots resembling diseased lung tissue. Medieval farmers believed this visual similarity meant the plant was destined to heal lung problems, and they were absolutely right. Medieval farmers typically prepared lungwort as tea by steeping fresh or dried leaves in hot water. The resulting brew had a mild, slightly bitter taste that was much more pleasant than many other medicinal herbs. They basically found a lung medicine that didn't taste like punishment. Medieval farmers used lungwort as a preventive measure during cold seasons, drinking lungwort tea regularly to strengthen their lungs. For more serious conditions like asthma or bronchitis, they would create steam treatments by adding lungwort to boiling water and inhaling the vapors. Medieval farmers noticed that lungwort seemed particularly effective for what they called winter lung, persistent coughs and breathing problems that developed during months of living in smoky, poorly ventilated homes. But medieval farmers needed more than just medicine. They also needed ways to make their limited diet more enjoyable and their celebrations more memorable, especially during the long winter months. Before hops became the standard flavoring for beer, medieval farmers relied on mugwort to give their homemade brews the bitter taste and preservative qualities they needed. Mugwort was basically the original craft beer ingredient, except medieval farmers were using it centuries before craft brewing became trendy. Mugwort grows tall and sturdy with deeply divided leaves that have a silvery underside. The plant basically advertised its brewing potential by smelling like it belonged in a mug. Medieval farmers discovered that adding mugwort to their beer brewing created beverages that lasted longer and tasted better than unhopped alternatives. They essentially invented beer quality control using nothing but plants and trial and error. But mugwort's usefulness extended far beyond brewing. Medieval farmers used the leaves to flavor roasted meats, especially fatty poultry and pork. The herb helped break down heavy meals and prevented stomach upset. The seasonal uses of mugwort were particularly important. Farmers would burn small amounts of dried mugwort during harvest festivals, since mugwort smoke also repelled insects. Medieval farmers also discovered that mugwort had interesting effects on sleep and dreams. Small amounts of mugwort tea consumed before bed seemed to promote vivid, memorable dreams. While mugwort could enhance celebrations and improve food flavors, medieval farmers still had to deal with the daily challenge of making their living spaces pleasant enough to endure during long winter months. Medieval farmers faced the constant challenge of keeping their homes smelling decent without access to modern cleaning products. Sweet woodruff became their solution for freshening living spaces while also providing a delightful ingredient for special beverages. This star-shaped leaf plant was basically medieval Febreze, except it actually smelled good and could be turned into a party drink. Sweet woodruff is instantly recognizable by its distinctive whorled leaves that grow in perfect star patterns. When the leaves are dried, they release their characteristic vanilla hay scent that can transform any musty medieval dwelling. The most common use was scattering dried sweet woodruff on floors and in living areas to combat unpleasant odors. Medieval farmers basically invented the first room freshener that got better the more you stepped on it. Sweet woodruff's most famous use was in creating May wine, a traditional spring beverage. Medieval farmers would steep fresh sweet woodruff in white wine for several days, creating a fragrant drink served at festivals. Medieval farmers also used sweet woodruff to freshen linens and clothing by tucking dried sprigs into storage chests. The plant thrived in shaded areas where other crops struggled and had mild sedative properties for promoting restful sleep. Pleasant aromas and comfortable homes were important, but medieval farmers also faced life-threatening emergencies that required immediate medical intervention. Medieval farmers faced frequent injuries from sharp tools, aggressive animals, and dangerous working conditions, requiring immediate treatment that could stop bleeding and prevent infection. Yarrow became their emergency medicine, earning the nickname Soldier's Woundwort. This feathery leaf plant was basically a first aid kit that grew wild everywhere. Yarrow is easy to identify by its distinctive fern-like leaves that are deeply divided into fine segments. Nature basically scattered emergency rooms across the landscape, ensuring help was never too far away. The primary use was for immediate wound treatment. Fresh yarrow leaves could be crushed and packed directly into wounds, where they would stop bleeding almost immediately while also preventing infection. Medieval farmers also used yarrow for internal problems, particularly fevers and women's health issues. Yarrow tea could break fevers by promoting sweating, helping the body cool itself naturally during illness. The preparation methods were beautifully simple for emergency use. Fresh yarrow leaves could be chewed briefly to release their active compounds, then applied directly to wounds. For larger injuries, farmers would crush multiple leaves with stones. The reliability of yarrow made it indispensable for medieval farming communities. Having yarrow around was like having medical insurance that never expired. While yarrow could handle medical emergencies when they occurred, medieval farmers preferred preventing problems altogether. And for that, they needed a plant that could create protective barriers against threats both seen and unseen. Medieval farmers lived in constant fear of diseases, pests, and misfortunes they couldn't understand, so they needed plants that could provide both practical protection and peace of mind. Rue became their all-purpose protective herb. This blue-green leafed plant was basically medieval homeland security, except it actually worked. Rue has a distinctive appearance with blue-green leaves that have a waxy coating, giving them an almost metallic sheen. The plant basically looked and smelled like it meant business. The primary use was as an insect repellent, particularly against fleas and lice that plagued medieval households. Farmers would plant rue around doorways and windows, creating natural barriers that bugs seemed reluctant to cross. Medieval farmers also used rue in what they called plague prevention, creating vinegar infusions that were applied to temples and pulse points during times of epidemic. But rue required careful handling that medieval farmers learned through painful experience. The plant contains compounds that can cause severe skin reactions, especially when exposed to sunlight. For pest control, fresh rue could be placed directly around problem areas or hung in bundles near doorways. For medicinal purposes, small amounts were infused in vinegar or wine for external use only. All these specialized herbs served important purposes, but medieval farmers needed one plant that could handle multiple problems every single day. Medieval farmers needed one reliable herb that could handle multiple health problems while also improving their food and preserving their meat. Sage became their ultimate multi-purpose plant, earning respect as both medicine and seasoning. This gray-green leafed herb was basically medieval healthcare and gourmet cooking rolled into one convenient package. Sage stands out with its distinctive velvety leaves that feel soft to the touch and release an intensely aromatic scent when crushed. The real value lies in those silvery green leaves that medieval farmers used fresh, dried, and preserved in various preparations. The medicinal uses of sage were extensive. Sage tea became the go-to remedy for sore throats, mouth ulcers, and gum problems. They basically invented the first mouthwash that actually tasted good and didn't burn your mouth. Medieval farmers used sage for digestive problems, memory issues, and what they called weakness of old age. They discovered a plant that could help people think better, eat better, and feel better all at the same time. The culinary applications were equally important, as sage could transform bland medieval food into something approaching edible. Medieval farmers basically found a seasoning that could make their food taste better while also keeping it from killing them. The plant thrived in ordinary garden soil, tolerated drought conditions, and actually improved with age. It was like having a medicine cabinet that got better with age instead of expiring. The wisdom of medieval farmers in recognizing and utilizing these 15 remarkable herbs represents a lost connection to practical, sustainable healthcare that modern society desperately needs to rediscover.